Police officers, what's the dumbest thing you've ever seen a criminal do or say? So my personal favorite was when a bloke on a motorbike swerved in front of our squad car and crashed. We hopped out, picked the bike up off him, it was pinning his leg, and asked, "You alright, mate?" To which he replied, "Of course I'm alright. What do you mean?" "Well, you just fell off your bike, mate." "No, I didn't." He just kept insisting that there was no way he could have crashed. And it must have been someone else. Edit: for those concerned, it was a head injury. He did blow a 17 when tested. So we chalked it up to that. I'm not a police officer, but I called the cops on my roommate in college because she tried to attack me and she wouldn't cooperate with the cops, so she got cuffed and was screaming about how she was gonna beat my ass. They were like, "Yeah? You were gonna beat her ass?" And she was agreeing LMAO. In court later, the judge asked her, "So you think it's okay to beat someone's ass if they turn your TV off when you're not there?" And she nodded and said, "Yes, I do," and the judge just deep sighed. Friend who is an officer told me this one a little bit ago. He was driving near where a known car thief lived. So he stops by SUV in the driveway with no tags. Walks up. Runs the VIN. Stolen. Now the property had a house on it. And then out back, a small mother-in-law suite where said thief lived. Officer walks out back. Knocks. And then hears a car door. Officer starts running. Engine starts. And yup. Thief is driving away in the stolen SUV. Officer knows where he ditches stolen cars at. So has an officer stake out that area. Sure enough, 2 hours later the SUV rolls up with a Jeep following it. SUV driver wipes down the dash. Wipes down the outside door handle and gets in the Jeep. Officer pulls them over and arrests them both. Why both? The Jeep is stolen. Officer runs her license. Send another officer to her address and guess what? She had a stolen car at her place too. 3 stolen cars recovered. 2 people in jail. All because one officer decided to stop by a thief's last address. I was waiting to report an incident at a local police station when a clearly distraught man came in wheezing and sweating. I wasn't in a rush, so I'll let him go ahead of me. "I've been robbed. They took everything," he exclaimed when he reached the counter. The officer working the desk asked him the usual what, where, why and how sort of questions. The gentleman proceeds to explain that he was a local meth dealer and he just got robbed of his entire stash while selling to some teens at the local train station. The officer just said that there's not anything they can do about that and it's in his best interest to just leave before more questions are raised, and he incriminates himself further. He was fuming and stormed out of the place, slamming the door behind him. I reached the counter and made an offhand comment towards the office: "That must be a first for you." Apparently not. Apparently drug dealers often come in to report theft of their illicit substances. Not my story, but my police officer friend's. He had gone in to arrest someone for dealing drugs. He was in full uniform, whilst someone else had already been in there undercover. The drug dealer looks at the undercover police officer and says, "You're undercover." "Yes." "Well done." He looks at my uniformed friend and says, "You're undercover too." He was not. Then he looks at someone else, not a police officer, and says, "And you?" Guy responds with, "How am I an undercover police officer? I just bought drugs off of you." And that's how they made an unexpected arrest at that raid. Not a police officer, but my father was a 911 dispatch operator. My dad was working one night and he gets a call from a man who is obviously drunk. "Dad. 911. What is your emergency?" "Drunk." "Yeah, UHH. I think I just heard a red car crash." "Dad. Oh. You heard a red car crash?" "Drunk." "Yeah." "Dad. Okay. Police are on their way." Click. My dad finds out later that this dude was driving drunk and crashed his car not far from his house. Guy decides to get out of his car, stumble home, and dial 911 to report the fact that he heard a car crash. In his drunken mind, He figured he'd report the crash as someone who heard it and he'd get off. Somehow. But he had to specify the color. Because apparently a red car crashing sounds different than a blue car crashing. Not a cop. Student paramedic here. Once went to a family with a 2-year-old with difficulty breathing. Walked into the house to find 4 people and the parents smoking weed with the baby in the room. Baby was crying and coughing, spluttering. Couldn't believe my eyes. My mentor swiftly rang for police backup and we filled out some safeguarding paperwork concerns. Pretty sure they arrested them on scene for neglect. Dad's a detective. Had a murder case where a dog walker found a severed head in a park. Over the rest of the morning they found a full set of chopped up body parts around that park. A trail of blood led from each part. And they followed them all the way back to a nearby house. In through the door and up the stairs to a room covered in blood with a guy asleep in a bed. Turns out this guy had got drunk with a friend. Had an argument. Killed him. Chopped him up and hid his body parts in the park before passing out back at the house. Police caught him literally red-handed. I read a theft suspect her Miranda rights, to which she stated in a recorded interview. I'm invoking my right to silence and a lawyer because I stole a lot of and I don't want to incriminate myself. Suspect was caught for drug possession on the streets, and we were talking to the prosecutor to get a warrant for his house. Somehow, he managed to call his wife without our notice, and as we realized what happened we heard him saying, "Honey, go take this fish out of the fridge." After we've got the warrant and searched his house, there was his fridge full of speed and the plate with fish which his wife had prepared for his return thrown in the trash. I stopped someone who was in the area of a load of theft from motor vehicles. After a bit of questioning I carried out a search and found numerous wallets, phones, etc. He claimed that all of the cards were his. All 13 different identities. To be fair, he stuck to his story. He carried it all the way to court going not guilty. Okay then. Mr. Jones, you are under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Mr. Fletcher, you are also under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Mrs. Rodriguez, you are under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Stopped a lady for speeding 15 miles per hour over the limit. I asked what her reason could be for going so fast. She said, "I live here. You can't give me a speeding ticket. I live just down the street. I live here. This is unbelievable. I live here." All the people from To Catch a Predator. NBC has online transcripts. And they still come up with the stupidest excuses. Chris Hansen. Sir. What else could you mean by asking the girl if she was a virgin and then telling her you wanted to penetrate her in LLY? Predator. I'm just here to watch football, man. She told me she was 18. Hansen. In the transcripts you clearly say she's 13. You could get in trouble for this and ask her not to tell anyone. I used to work in arraignments and a guy was entering his not guilty plea and confirming that he was true billed, that they have the right name on his charging instrument. After that the court asks if you can afford an attorney and asks some quick questions before giving you paperwork to request a court-appointed attorney. This guy was booked on unlawful use of a motor vehicle Class C. Basically stealing car stereos. The judge asks him if he's employed. He says no. The judge asks him what he does for money. Oh. I steal car stereos at rest stops and sell them. Motor vehicle stop. License and registration please. Proceeds to lean over to the passenger's seat. Scoop up a handful of low mine and tries to put it in the officer's hand. He was locked up for OUI 4th offense. To this day I still wonder if he thought he was passing his correct paperwork or if the Chinese food was some sort of peace offering. Not a police officer but a witness to a crime who had to give evidence in court. Basically witnessed a girl crashing her car and barrel rolling it into a tree. She was clearly drunk. Firemen arrived after 10 minutes, her car had leaked petrol everywhere. Then her husband shows up on foot and tries to calm her down. Followed by her mother in a car and the police. She tried to claim that she wasn't the one driving, even though no one else had been in the car. In court a year later, She said her mother had been driving, the one who showed up in her own car 10 minutes after the crash. She also punched an officer in the face and was pepper sprayed, but that's a whole other story. Needless to say, she was found guilty. Dispatcher. Had a guy call in and tell us that he's currently violating the protective order by being with his ex who is pregnant by him. Wants us to call the judge and get it dismissed so they can go inside the restaurant and eat. Officer is standing next to my partner who answered the call and asks the guys where he is so we can send the judge to him. Guy hangs up. Responded to an apartment complex for a kid eating a corn dog and was stuck on the roof. The FD arrives and gets the kid off the roof. I told the kids why he was eating a corn dog on the roof. His answer was because I threw it up there. Full stop. His look of duh left me speechless. DUI trial. Defendant chooses to represent herself. She tries to introduce evidence during the trial, but is quickly blocked by the prosecution. The judge, maybe taking pity on the flaming train wreck that was this woman's defense, asks to see the evidence. It was a receipt from the bar she left before I stopped her that showed that she purchased 2 large margaritas. Her whole defense was, I couldn't have been drunk after only 2 margaritas. She was found guilty. My initial reason for stopping her was that she drove down an embankment on the side of the road to get to a McDonald's drive-thru. My friend is sober driving and there's not enough seats, so 2 people offer to go in the boot. On the way she gets pulled over and the officer comes up to the window and asks if she knows why he pulled her over. She says because of the 2 people in my boot. Full stop. The cop says no. Because you failed to indicate at the last intersection. But tell me more about the people in your boot. These are my pants. My ex to the cop who pulled him and his friends over. I'm so high right now. I had a friend back in the day that earned the name DUI Don because he was driving a girl home after some partying one night. She was faced and he was only high as balls. Gets pulled over. Could easily say that he's sober. Happy to blow into the tube. Etc. Get out of it. First thing he says to the cop is, I'm going to level with you. I'm really high. Spent that night in jail. The cherry on this, and the reason I know the full details of it all, is because the girl with him was 17 and bonus homeless. When she didn't have anywhere else to go, she gave them my address, an 18-year-old living alone, and I got to become her temporary legal guardian. Awesome night. Thanks DUI Don. Edit. Should have added S to that final thank you and awesome night. Sir, can I see your driver's license? I don't have one. Then why were you driving? I wasn't, I was traveling. Second-hand story. As I was the victim of burglary, but heard this from the police officer. I saw the guy breaking into my place on a security camera and called them. They managed to arrest the guy while he was still inside packing up my stuff. He was pretty cocky to the police, as that he thought that as he hadn't actually left with his bag of swag, my stuff, that he hadn't committed a crime yet. All he did was broke a window. My grandpa was a cop. He told me a story about how when he was still in uniform filling up his squad car, someone tried to rob him with a knife. Needless to say, that didn't work out for him. Edit. Some people were a bit confused. My grandpa just pulled his gun and arrested the man. Sorry for the confusion. Apparently it went something like this. Robber. Give me your wallet, grandpa. What? Robber. Give me your wallet. Grandpa. Are you sure you want to do that? Robber. Yeah, now hand it over. Grandpa. Okay. Pulls gun out. You're under arrest. Robber. Drugs are a hell of a drug. My brother is a Detroit cop. Told me this one. They get a call from someone reporting their car was stolen. They show up and it turns out someone had already stolen the tires off the car. Then a different group stole the actual car. They pushed it 2 blocks without tires and left perfect grooves in the street all the way to their garage. Their defense was, but we didn't steal the tires. Detroit. When we rob you, we really rob you. Not a cop but a corrections officer. Two inmates got into a fight in a hallway. I was the closest to them and only saw the start of the fight out of the corner of my eye. In my report I wrote that I saw the two inmates fall to the ground with name on top of other inmate. Later, the hearing sergeant was reading the report to one of the inmates, so they could dispute any facts in the report they felt were untrue or biased. He asked the inmate if they wanted to dispute any facts in my report. The inmate said, "Yeah. We didn't fall to the ground." I grabbed the other inmate and slammed his ass on the floor. What would have been a simple fighting charge turned into an assault charge. The confession is my own. Cop. You were going 95 miles an hour. Do you know what the speed limit is? Me. No. Cop. It's 55 miles per hour. Me. Sorry sir, I thought it was a 65. Not a cop. But I used to read a lot of police reports at my old job. My favorite was a woman who refused to breathalyzer by telling the cop, "I won't blow on that, but I'll blow on your dick." In a city near to me, a guy murdered a woman, put her body in a large garment bag, and left her in a vacant lot. Unfortunately for him, he forgot to take the tags with his name and address off the bag from a recent flight. Would-be bank robber wrote his hold-up note and put it into his wallet. He got rattled at the bank and accidentally left his driver's license on the counter when he handed the note to a teller. A third crook just took on more than he could handle and apparently didn't watch the time. He had a long history of grand theft auto and was hospitalized after being badly beaten in the parking lot of a sports area after a lacrosse game. The guy swore up and down that he had no idea why anyone would assault him there. In court. Friend's daughter and daughter's boyfriend get busted with a kilo of weed. Semicolon. Friend's daughter says, "Oh. We weren't going to smoke it. We were going to sell it." My boyfriend is a police officer. Last week he pulled over a drunk driver who ended up speeding off. Car chase back to his house and drunk guy tells him, "I got home. It's okay. You can go now." Drunk guy continues arguing and it's 3 AM, so his family wakes up and his son steps out to the front porch and yells, "Damn it, Dad, you freaking idiot. He told you to stop doing this." The serial killer BTK. He used to send taunting letters to the media and to the police about his crimes. He seemingly stopped all activity for around 10 years when he started to communicate again. He asked the police if he could be traced if he sent them a floppy disk and they told him no. He sent them a floppy disk and they recovered data that included his name and his church. He was quickly arrested. There are so many to choose from, but one sticks out. Dude decides that his DLDO no longer is doing the trick by itself, so he uses his creative liberty to construct an apparatus to enhance his experience. He takes his once boring OLED LDO and bolts it in an upright position on the top of his nightstand to create the Megatron of SX toys. Unfortunately for him, and us, he found himself unable to disengage from his new toy. Evidently, the once pleasurable toy was now a torture device because his screams of agony were alarming loud enough to get the attention of his neighbor, who called 911. After 10 minutes of unsuccessful attempts by police and EMS to remove homeboy from his device, we ultimately had to unbolt the toy from the nightstand and transport him to the hospital with the toy still intact. This happened just last week. Semicolon. Officers attend a house at about 500 hours looking for a wanted man. Let's call him MR. A woman answers the door, and officers explain their reasoning and ask to come in for a search. She allows it. Semicolon. Whilst searching the bedroom, an officer opens the wardrobe and finds a mail in there. Semicolon. Officer. What's your name? Semicolon. Man. I'm MR. Capital B. Semicolon. Officer. Why are you hiding in the wardrobe? Semicolon. MR. B. I'm not allowed to be here. There's a restraining order between me and her. Semicolon. We still don't know why he admitted everything he had done. Officers knew he wasn't MR, as they'd seen a photo of him. It turned out MR B had only just come out of a prison sentence, which he served because he broke the previous restraining order, and upon his release, went straight to her. Semicolon. He was not a clever man. My Bill is a cop in a small town. Pulled a car over one night. Recognized the kid. Smelled weed inside the car. And said, give me the weed and I won't search your car. Won't give you a ticket. And you can be on your way. Kid fights him. Says he doesn't know what that smell is. There's no weed. And how can I trust that you won't take me to the station if I give it to you? Bill promises again that if he hands him the weed, he will let him go. No questions asked. Kid keeps being a moron. Bill searches the car and finds many more drugs hidden all over, as well as weed. Bill says alright, let's go to the station. Kid gets upset and says, you said you weren't going to do this. See? I couldn't trust you. I groan and laugh every time I think of that. What a dummy. My bro arrested this girl for DUI. She was so drunk he skipped the field sobriety test as he walked her to his patrol car. The girl says, wait, you haven't read me my ABCs. Yeah, so this one is my own. The first time I got pulled over for a random breath test I was really excited. New driver and was totally sober. This hot cop comes up to my window and holds out the device and tells me to count to 10. I didn't know there were new breathalyzers without a straw, so I said, oh no, I thought I'd get to blow something. He laughed and my brother, who was in the passenger seat, died of shame. Arrested a guy for shooting heroin in the parents' room of a shopping center. Walked in while he had the needle in his arm. We stare at each other for a bit. Then he comes out with, I'm a diabetic. I cuff him. Leave my partner to do the search while I read caution and rights. Old mate is not diabetic and we know this because he's got 87 prior convictions for use, possession, trafficking drugs. I go through the usual you do not have to say or do anything spiel. Then say, do you understand these rights? He's totally cooked on heroin at this point and he just looks at me and goes, you want to get dinner tonight? It's not the worst response I've had to caution and rights though. Edit. I had no idea this would gain the amount of comments it did. There seems to be loads of questions in the replies, so if anyone has any for me, feel free to DM me and I'll answer them. For clarification, I'm in Australia. Not an officer. Just security. Many moons ago when in questioning, my cousin told police, you don't have my fingerprints. I wore gloves. Came in to be voluntarily arrested so he could be interviewed. Decided to bring his meth pipe and meth with him. Didn't get charged for what he came in for, but did get charged with possessed drugs and possessed paraphernalia. Witnessed a hilarious one go down. 2 kids. I will call Juan and Carl getting escorted out of a mall near me. Apparently nothing too bad. Just suspect that they had stolen some shoes from a store. While they're being escorted, Juan tries to rip away from one of the security guards and starts screaming, if you're gonna handle me, you might as well detain me. So, the kids would have just been escorted off property and asked to leave. No ban from the mall or anything. Until he then tried to assault the security guard by pushing her and almost throws a punch. The third guard in the case, who I will properly call Goliath, proceeds to basically choke slam this kid into the ground. Cops were then called. Kids were arrested and had their searched. The second best part? They had proof they purchased the shoes and didn't show their receipt even though they had it. The best part? Both the dumbasses had a ton of weed in their bags that the cops found. In my country it is illegal to drive a bike moped whilst smoking. A friend of mine got pulled over on the short ride from the bar to his apartment, driving on a small moped. Basically a bicycle with a 50cc engine. And cop asked him, why is he not wearing a helmet and why is he smoking a cigarette? Officer, I swear I never smoked while driving. I only smoked when I had a couple of drinks. Copied mine from a previous similar thread. In law enforcement but not a regular cop. Middle of search warrant looking for a bloke. Lots of drug convictions in the past. Found a still burning blunt in the ashtray in the living room. But no sign of the guy in the house. I am 99% sure he is in the roof cavity. I announced to my partner I think he is up there. Should we look? Suddenly the ceiling starts talking. Hear the softest no. Heh. Dot. Can they hear me? Nah. It's all good. So my partner said nah man. I didn't hear that guy say we shouldn't look up there. Ceiling replies with sweet. I knew they wouldn't find me. Needless to say we looked and pulled a very stoned guy out from under the insulation bass. Side note. They make you itchy AF, so be careful choosing your hiding spots when you're stoned. Knack but my exes. And he told me once that they got a call because a gas station just got robbed by a guy in a ski mask with a gun. Witnesses say that he ran away but got into a car about a block away and drives off. X is driving down the side street and sees a guy driving the opposite direction with a ski mask on. Flips around and lights him up. Guy pulls over. X gets him out of the car and puts handcuffs on him and checks the car. And lo and behold, there's the cash and cigarettes in the beer and the gun. Guy is honestly shook and keeps asking how they knew it was him. X pulls Guy's ski mask off. And it was Old Man Jenkins the whole time.